Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes.
Yes.
Today we're diving deep into Iran, A Modern History by Abbas Amanat.
It's
The big one.
it is quite a hefty book.
So we're here to help you get through it and give you all the information you need.
Yeah, it's it's not just like a straight retelling of, dates and kings.
Right.
Amanat kind of finds these fascinating threads throughout the text.
Okay.
Things like the enduring legacy of ancient Persia,
Mm-hmm.
the constant interplay of religion and politics,
Mm-hmm.
and Iran's struggle to define itself on like a global stage.
So it's like a historical detective novel,
Exactly.
uncovering these forces that have shaped Iran over the centuries.
Yeah. And one thing that really kind of struck me
Yeah.
was how much ancient Persia, particularly the Shahnameh,
Right.
is still like,
Resonates today.
yeah, the Shahnameh, for people who don't know,
Yeah,
it's like their national epic.
it is.
It's got heroes and kings and all this stuff.
It's their origin story. Right. But how does a poem from centuries ago influence a modern nation?
Well, think about it as a cultural touchstone.
Okay.
Iranians have faced a lot of upheaval over the years.
Yeah, invasions, revolutions, you name it.
Exactly. And through all of that, the Shahnameh
Yeah.
gives them a sense of continuity,
Okay.
a shared heritage to draw strength from.
So it's more than just literature?
Exactly.
It's like it's in their national DNA?
Yes. And then you have the role of religion,
Okay.
particularly Shi'ism, which became the state religion under the Safavids.
Right, back in the 16th century.
Yeah, and it had a seismic impact on Iran's identity.
Yeah, and it still shapes their politics even today.
Oh, absolutely.
It's interesting how religion can be both a unifying force and a source of conflict at the same time.
Yeah, Amanat kind of explores that throughout the book.
Okay.
He shows how these religious leaders, the ulama,
Right.
sometimes support the rulers and sometimes challenge them.
Yeah, it sounds like a delicate balancing act.
Oh, and it is.
So we've got this internal struggle, but then there's also this constant geopolitical pressure.
Absolutely.
Iran's always been at the crossroads of empires,
Right.
navigating between Russia and Britain and even the U.S. in more recent times.
Yeah, it's like a constant game of chess,
Yeah.
trying to maintain your independence amidst all these power struggles.
It sounds exhausting.
It has been a tumultuous journey.
And you see that reflected in the rise and fall of all these dynasties.
Exactly.
The Safavids, Zands, Qajars, Pahlavis.
Each one rising with promises,
Right.
only to eventually succumb to internal divisions or external pressures.
Yeah. Are there any patterns we can learn from all of this?
Well, that's what I like about Amanat's book.
All right.
He doesn't just present the facts.
Yeah.
He invites you to think critically about these forces that have shaped Iran,
Okay.
to see the connections between past and present.
All right, so let's get into the specifics.
Okay.
Where does his journey begin?
He starts with the Safavids,
Okay.
the dynasty that really solidified Iran's identity as a Shia nation back in the 16th century.
The Safavids.
Yes.
I'm always fascinated by those early empire builders.
Oh, yeah.
They were ruthless, ambitious, larger-than-life figures.
Well, the Safavids certainly fit the bill.
Okay, tell me about them.
Well, their founder, Shah Ismail, I was a real warrior king.
Okay.
He swept across Persia in the early 16th century,
Yeah.
Forcibly converting people to Shi'ism and consolidating his power.
So not exactly a gentle persuasion campaign.
Not at all.
Okay.
In fact, Amanat describes some pretty brutal incidents.
Like what?
Well, like the fate of Ismail's rival Marad Beg Bayandori.
Okay.
After capturing him, Ismail had him roasted alive, and then,
Oh, my goodness.
well, let's just say his troops were encouraged to partake
Oh, wow.
in a rather gruesome feast.
Well, that's one way to eliminate your rivals.
It certainly sent a message.
And I bet nobody messed with them after that.
No, but, the Safavids weren't just about brute force.
Okay.
They also presided over a period of cultural flourishing,
Okay.
particularly under Shah Abbas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Shah Abbas.
Yes.
He's the one who made Isfahan into this magnificent capital.
Exactly.
With the mosques and the palaces and all that.
He transformed Isfahan into
Yeah.
this dazzling city.
I've seen pictures. It's incredible.
Yeah, Amanat describes it as this place where the sacred and the profane intertwined.
Oh, wow. I like that.
And he talks about the Maidan,
Tomato.
the central square,
Okay.
designed to showcase the Shah's power and connect him with the people.
Okay.
Imagine this bustling square
Yeah.
with the royal mosque on one side, the entrance to the bazaar on the other,
Uh-huh.
and in the middle, polo matches, military parades, all sorts of festivities.
Wow. It's like a scene out of a movie.
It was a vibrant time, and Abbas, I was a shrewd ruler.
Yeah.
He knew that to compete on the world stage, he needed to boost Iran's economy.
So what did he do?
He focused on developing the silk trade,
Okay.
and he even enlisted the help of Armenian merchants
Okay.
who were known for their trading expertise.
That's a smart move.
Yeah.
Bringing in outside talent
Yeah.
to boost your own economy.
Yeah, so they were more than just religious zealots. They were
Right.
savvy politicians and economic strategists.
Okay. But like all empires, they eventually decline.
Right.
So what were the cracks in their foundation?
Well, internal divisions played a big role.
Okay.
The Kizilbash, the Turkic tribes that helped them rise to power,
Right.
became increasingly fractious.
Okay.
And the ulama, those religious scholars we mentioned,
Yes.
started to assert their own authority.
Challenging the Shah's power.
Exactly.
So the very forces that helped them rise to power eventually turned against them.
It's a familiar story, isn't it?
It is. And it seems like those tensions between secular and religious authority are a recurring theme in Iranian history.
Absolutely.
So the Safavid grip on power weakens, and then what happens?
Well, then Iran enters this period of turmoil and instability,
Okay.
what Amanat calls the unhappy interregnums.
The unhappy interregnum.
Yes.
That doesn't sound promising.
It was a period marked by short-lived dynasties,
Mhm.
ambitious warlords,
Okay.
and constant power struggles,
So basically chaos.
pretty much.
But were there any bright spots during this time?
There were a few.
Like what?
One of the most fascinating figures from this era is Nader Shah.
Oh, Nader Shah.
Yeah.
The warrior king.
He was a brilliant military commander
Okay.
who came from humble origins.
Right.
And he briefly united Iran
Okay.
and even conquered parts of India.
Wow.
But his reign was also marked by brutality and paranoia.
Okay.
And in the end, he met a violent end.
Assassinated by his own guards.
It's a classic rise and fall.
It is.
Another cycle of power.
Yeah, but wasn't there also a ruler known for his justice and peace during this chaotic time?
You're thinking of Karim Khanzan.
Karim Khanzan.
Yeah, he established a relatively peaceful and prosperous state in southern Iran
Okay.
in the mid-18th century.
Okay.
He's remembered for his just rule and his efforts to promote stability after all that chaos.
A beacon of hope.
He was remarkable.
Yeah.
But sadly, his dynasty didn't last long.
Of course not.
After his death, Iran fell back into instability, paving the way for the Qajars.
The Qajars.
Yeah, another dynasty that would leave its mark on Iranian history.
Those portraits of the Qajar Shahs,
Oh, yeah.
they are incredible.
With those elaborate costors and beards.
Yeah, they look like they came straight out of a storybook.
They had a distinctive style.
They did.
But the Qajars faced a new set of challenges.
What was that?
The growing influence of European powers.
Like Russia and Britain.
Exactly.
They were hungry for those resources.
They were eager to expand their empires and secure access to Iran's resources.
So how did the Qajars navigate that pressure?
It was a delicate balancing act.
I bet.
They tried to play Russia and Britain off against each other,
Okay.
while also trying to modernize their army
Mhm.
and engage with European technology
Okay.
in hopes of strengthening their position.
So a high-stakes game of diplomacy and survival.
You could say that.
Right.
They had some successes,
Okay.
but also some significant setbacks.
Like what?
Well, they lost territories in the Caucasus to Russia
Okay.
after a series of wars,
Yeah.
which fueled a lot of resentment and humiliation.
Oh, yeah, that's got to be tough.
It was. And they were forced to sign a number of unequal treaties.
With Britain and Russia
Exactly.
further eroding their sovereignty.
And fanning the flames of nationalist sentiment.
So even as they were trying to modernize,
Yeah.
they were being forced to make concessions to these empires.
It was a time of great change and uncertainty.
Yeah, I bet it was incredibly frustrating for them.
It was, and those tensions eventually boiled over.
Okay, how so?
In the form of a movement
Okay.
that would have a lasting impact on Iran.
What's that?
The Constitutional Revolution.
The Constitutional Revolution?
Uh-huh.
This sounds like a major turning point.
It erupted in the early 20th century.
Okay.
And it was a response to the growing discontent with the Qajars
Okay.
and this desire for a more representative government.
So a push for democracy.
Yeah, it was a complex movement,
Okay.
drawing inspiration from both Islamic traditions and Western ideas of constitutionalism.
So a blend of internal and external influences.
Exactly.
It seems like that's a constant theme.
It is. So what happened? Well, the revolutionaries demanded greater political freedom,
Okay.
limits on the Shah's authority, and a more just legal system.
It's a real change.
They even managed to establish a parliament,
Oh, wow.
Iran's first parliament,
Okay.
called the Meticulous.
The Madail.
Yeah.
So they forced the Shah to accept a constitution.
It wasn't an easy victory.
I imagine not.
The revolution was a turbulent period,
Yeah.
with clashes between reformers and conservative forces.
Okay.
One particularly striking episode
Yeah.
is the Siege of Tabriz.
The Siege of Tabriz.
Yeah, where these constitutionalist forces, representing a diverse cross-section of Iranian society,
Okay.
held out against a royalist assault
Wow.
for months.
Okay, so a real show of force for this movement.
Yeah, they demonstrated the depth of popular support for change.
Wow. So did the revolutionaries ultimately succeed?
It was a partial victory.
Okay.
They secured a constitution and a parliament,
Okay.
but the road to reform was far from smooth.
What were the challenges?
Well, the Majles faced constant challenges from the Qajar monarchs who tried to undermine their authority,
Right.
and from those meddling empires again.
Britain and Russia.
Britain and Russia.
They just couldn't resist interfering, could they?
It seems not.
So what did they do this time?
Well, in 1907, they signed the Anglo-Russian Agreement,
Okay.
which essentially divided Iran into spheres of influence.
Oh, wow.
It was a devastating blow to Iran's sovereignty.
Just as they were taking their first steps towards democracy.
Exactly.
And self-determination.
It fueled nationalist anger,
Yeah.
but it also led to a greater sense of national solidarity,
Okay.
this determination to resist foreign domination.
The seeds of resistance.
Exactly, and those seeds would grow in the years leading up to the next major chapter in Iranian history,
Which is the Pahlavi era.
the Pahlavi.
Yes. Another dynasty, another era of transformation and turmoil.
Iranian history never seems to get boring.
You can say that again, and the Pahlavi era is particularly fascinating because it lays the groundwork for the Iran we know today.
Whoa, I can't wait to delve into that.
Okay.
But I think we should probably take a quick break,
Okay.
refresh our mental hard drives, and we'll be back in a flash
Sounds good.
to explore the rise of Reza Shah and all the events that led to the Islamic Revolution.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Iranian history.
All right, so last time we left off
Yeah.
with the Qajars kind of struggling
Yeah.
against those European powers, and now we're on to the Pahlavis.
Right, a new era.
Visually, they're a stark contrast from the Qajars.
Yeah, you don't see those elaborate robes and beards anymore.
Yeah, they're gone, replaced by military uniforms.
A more westernized appearance. Yeah, so what prompted that shift?
Well, the man behind this transformation was Reza Shah.
Reza Shah.
Yeah, a military officer who came to power after World War I,
Right.
and he believed in a strong, centralized state.
Okay, so very different from the Qajars,
Oh, yeah, a complete departure.
who were kind of weakened by that foreign influence.
Exactly.
So he wanted to modernize Iran
He did.
and assert its independence.
And he wasn't afraid to shake things up.
Like, what did he do?
He launched these ambitious infrastructure projects,
Oh,
like the Trans-Iranian Railroad.
the Trans-Iranian Railroad?
Yeah.
What was that?
Connecting the Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea.
Wow, so like across the entire country.
Imagine the logistics of building a railroad across mountains and deserts.
It must have been a huge undertaking.
It was a testament to his vision
Yeah.
and his determination.
And it must have been a powerful symbol of progress
Oh, absolutely.
for the nation.
And national unity.
Yeah, so what else did he do?
Well, he also focused on modernizing the army, expanding education, and promoting industry.
Yeah.
He even implemented social reforms.
Like what?
Well, like unveiling women,
Oh, the unveiling of women.
which sparked a lot of debate
Yeah, I bet.
and resistance.
Yeah, it was a bold move.
It was challenging traditional norms.
Yeah, highlighting that tension between modernization and tradition.
Right. And Reza Shah saw the veil as a symbol of backwardness.
Oh.
He believed that women should participate fully in public life,
Okay.
but many, especially in religious circles, saw it as an attack on their values.
So we've got progress versus identity
Exactly.
playing out in a very personal way.
And this tension kind of runs throughout Reza Shah's reign.
Yeah.
He was a modernizer, a nation builder,
Okay.
but also an authoritarian.
So bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, a complicated legacy.
But amidst all this change, I imagine there was a cultural shift as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So what was that like?
There was this surge in nationalism,
Okay.
a celebration of Persian language and history,
Yeah.
and also a debate about what it meant to be Iranian in this modern world.
So were there any prominent figures or movements that came out of this?
Well, one notable figure is Muhammad Taqi Bahar,
Cool.
a scholar and poet
Okay.
who wrote a lot about Persian literature and style.
Okay.
His work, Sab Shanasi, explored the evolution of Persian prose,
Yeah.
and he emphasized its resilience in the face of historical challenges.
So kind of resonating with that nationalist spirit.
Exactly.
But did Reza Shah, with his authoritarian tendencies, allow for free expression?
Not entirely.
Oh, right.
He maintained tight control over the press and public expression.
Though no dissent.
He suppressed any criticism of his regime.
But I imagine there were still ways people found to express themselves.
Oh, there were subtle forms of resistance.
Okay.
You know, artists and writers embedded these coded messages in their work.
Oh, interesting.
Hinting at the dissatisfaction.
So the art of subversion.
Exactly.
Expressing dissent through creativity.
That's the human spirit, right?
Yeah, it is. But even the strongest of strongmen eventually fall.
That's true.
So what led to Reza Shah's downfall?
Well, World War II proved to be his undoing.
Oh, how so?
Well, he tried to remain neutral.
Okay.
But Iran's strategic location and those valuable oil reserves made it a target.
Yeah, for both sides.
Exactly. In 1941, British and Soviet forces invaded.
Oh, wow.
And occupied Iran.
And so what happened to Reza Shah?
He was forced to abdicate
Oh,
in favor of his son,
Okay.
Mohammad Reza Shah.
So the Pahlavi dynasty continues.
It does.
But under very different circumstances.
Very different.
So how was Mohammad Reza Shah different from his father?
Well, he shared his father's desire for a modern and powerful Iran.
Okay.
But he faced new challenges.
Like what?
The rise of new ideologies like communism and Islamism.
And the Cold War.
The looming shadow of the Cold War.
So how did he navigate all of that?
He chose to align closely with the West, particularly the U.S., seeing them as protection against Soviet expansionism.
Okay, so that makes sense geopolitically.
It does.
But did it come at a cost?
It did.
Bro.
It fueled resentment among many Iranians who saw it as a form of neocolonialism. They felt that he was prioritizing Western interests.
Over Iranian independence.
Exactly. And this resentment was especially strong among nationalists and Islamists who saw the U.S. as a corrupting influence.
So even as he's modernizing Iran, his ties to the U.S. are creating problems for him.
Exactly. And this discontent found its focal point in the oil nationalization movement.
The oil nationalization movement.
Yeah, this was a major turning point.
In what way?
Well, it was a direct challenge to foreign control.
Over their oil.
Over Iran's most valuable resource. And it was led by Mohammad Mossadegh. A charismatic nationalist leader who demanded that Iran take control of its own oil industry.
Which was controlled by...
largely by British companies.
Okay, so this must have been a huge threat to the British.
It was.
And to the Shah.
Absolutely. The movement resonated deeply with Iranians.
Who wanted independence.
Who yearned for economic independence and national sovereignty. And in 1951, the Iranian parliament voted to nationalize the oil industry.
So they took control.
They did.
What was the reaction?
It sent shockwaves through the world.
Yeah.
It was a brief moment of triumph for the Iranian people. But the British were not going to give up so easily.
What did they do?
They orchestrated a coup in 1953.
A coup? With the help of?
The CIA.
They overthrew Mossadegh.
And what happened to the Shah?
And restored the Shah to power.
The 1953 coup.
That's a pivotal moment.
Not just for Iran.
But for the entire Middle East.
Yeah. It really solidified the U.S.'s role in the region.
It did.
But it also fueled that anti-Western sentiment.
Oh, absolutely.
That would eventually lead to the Islamic Revolution. You're right. The coup had far-reaching consequences, shaping Iran's relationship with the West.
For decades.
For decades to come.
So the Shah is back in power.
He is.
But his legitimacy is damaged.
Yeah. He had betrayed the trust of his people.
And aligned himself even more closely with the U.S.
Right.
So what did he do to kind of regain the trust of the people?
He tried to appease the public through reforms. Known as the White Revolution.
The White Revolution? What was that all about?
It was aimed at modernizing Iran's economy and society.
Okay, so on the surface, it seems like a good thing.
It did.
But what was the actual impact?
Well, while it led to some economic progress and social change, it also exacerbated existing inequalities.
Okay, so it wasn't all good.
It alienated traditional sectors of society.
Like who?
Like the clergy and bazaar merchants.
So basically the people who had the most to lose.
Exactly, and it fueled resentment.
Towards the Shah.
Towards the Shah.
So even with reforms, He's failing to address those underlying tensions.
He is.
And those unresolved tensions.
Right.
Create this fertile ground for the rise of a new leader.
Yes.
Who was that?
Ayatollah Khomeini.
Ayatollah Khomeini.
Yeah, the man who would lead the Islamic Revolution.
Toppling the Pahlavi dynasty.
And transforming Iran into an Islamic republic.
His story and the story of the revolution itself are crucial to understanding modern Iran.
Absolutely. And that's where we'll pick up in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore the factors that led to the Islamic Revolution.
Right.
The key players involved.
Okay.
And the lasting legacy of this transformative event.
Okay, so we're back.
We are.
And ready to unravel the events that led to the Islamic Revolution.
Yeah, this was a turning point.
A turning point
for Iran.
Not just for Iran, but for the whole region.
A whole region, exactly.
And at the center of it all, we have Ayatollah Khomeini.
Right. A truly fascinating figure.
Yeah, what made him such a powerful leader?
You know, he was more than just a religious figure. He was a brilliant political strategist.
Okay.
And he understood the frustrations of the Iranian people.
Right. They were unhappy with the Shah.
They were unhappy with his authoritarianism.
Right.
His close ties to the West.
Yeah.
And his attempts to secularize Iranian society.
Right. Kind of pushing aside those traditional Islamic values.
Exactly.
So Khomeini becomes a voice for the people.
Yeah, voice for those who felt marginalized by the Shah's modernization.
But the interesting thing is he did all of this from exile.
That's right.
He was forced to leave Iran in the 1960s. And he lived in Turkey and then in Iraq.
Yeah, but his message still reached the Iranian people.
How did he manage that?
Through smuggled audio recordings and writings distributed in mosques and universities.
So a revolutionary leader operating from afar?
Exactly.
Kind of amazing that that's even possible.
It is a testament to his influence.
So what were his key messages?
Well, he condemned the Shah's regime, calling it corrupt, decadent, a puppet of Western imperialism.
Yeah.
He wanted an Islamic republic.
An Islamic republic.
A government based on Islamic law.
So a complete overhaul of the political system.
Exactly. Rejecting both the Shah's authoritarianism and the Western model of democracy.
Interesting. So what was the response to that message?
Well, it resonated with a lot of Iranians.
Okay.
You know, those who felt alienated by the Shah's secular reforms.
Okay.
They saw Khomeini as a righteous leader, someone who could cleanse Iran of Western corruption and restore its Islamic identity.
So we've got the stage set.
Right.
We've got an unpopular Shah, growing social unrest, and a charismatic leader calling for revolution.
It's a recipe for change.
So what were the key events that tipped the scales in Khomeini's favor?
One pivotal moment was the death of Mustafa Khomeini.
Who was that?
The Ayatollah's son, in 1977. And although the circumstances were never fully clarified, many Iranians believed he was assassinated.
By the Shah.
By the Shah's secret police.
Right, the Savak.
Exactly. And this fueled public anger.
Creating a martyr for the cause.
Yeah, it galvanized the opposition.
Were there any other triggers?
There were several.
Okay, like what?
In January of 1978, a government-backed newspaper published an article insulting Khomeini. And this sparked protests in Qom.
Qom, that's a holy city.
It is a holy city.
Okay.
And those protests led to clashes with security forces.
So things are escalating.
They are.
So how did the Shah respond?
Initially, he tried to use force to quell the protests. It just made things worse as the protests grew.
Yeah.
The Shah seemed increasingly out of touch, unable to control the situation.
You can't fool all the people all the time.
Exactly. His grip on power was slipping.
So what did he try?
He tried different tactics.
Okay, like what?
He appointed reformist prime ministers.
Okay.
He promised greater freedoms. Nothing seemed to work.
The people had enough.
They had. The protests were fueled by economic grievances, political repression, and religious fervor.
Yeah.
And they spread from the cities to the countryside.
So a true mass movement.
It was a tidal wave of discontent.
And Khomeini is still in exile.
He is.
But he's leading this movement.
He remained the figurehead of the revolution.
So how does the Shah ultimately fall?
Well, by the end of 1978, it was clear his days were numbered. The protests had crippled the economy. The army was showing signs of disloyalty. And even his Western allies were losing faith.
So what did he do?
In January 1979, he fled Iran.
Wow. Just like that.
He never returned.
So Khomeini returns.
He does.
Triumphant.
Yes.
And the Islamic Republic is established.
A new era for Iran.
But the story doesn't end there.
It doesn't.
There's a lot to do.
Building a new nation is a daunting task.
It is. So what were some of the challenges?
Well, one of the most dramatic events was the hostage crisis.
Oh, the hostage crisis.
Yeah.
In 1979.
Iranian students stormed the U.S. embassy in Tehran, taking dozens of American diplomats hostage.
A very tense situation.
It was a shocking act of defiance.
Yeah, against the U.S.
It thrust Iran into the global spotlight, and it further strained relations between Iran and the U.S.
Leading to sanctions and isolation.
Exactly.
So how long did this crisis last?
Over a year.
Wow, over a year.
It really deepened the divide within Iran as well.
Between?
Those who supported that radical anti-Western stance, and those who wanted a more moderate approach.
Okay, so internally there's this struggle going on.
There is.
And externally, they're dealing with this major international crisis.
It was a difficult time.
So what happened next?
Well, internally, there were power struggles. Between different factions.
What were the factions?
Those who wanted a more moderate approach. A more democratic Islamic state. And those who wanted a stricter interpretation of Islamic law.
So a more hardline approach.
Exactly.
It seems like that's a recurring theme in revolutions.
It is this tension between reform and revolution.
So how did that play out?
Well, it was a turbulent period.
Yeah.
Marked by power struggles. And a crackdown on dissent.
So they consolidated power.
They did.
But at a cost.
At a cost.
To freedom and human rights.
Unfortunately, yes.
Were there any other major events during this time?
Well, one of the most consequential events was the Iran-Iraq War.
The Iran-Iraq War.
Yeah.
That was in 1980 when Saddam Hussein invaded.
Exactly.
This was a brutal conflict.
It was.
How long did it last?
8 years.
8 years.
It had a profound impact on Iranian society.
Yeah, I bet.
Hundreds of thousands of lives lost.
It must have left a scar on the national psyche.
It did. Amanat describes it as a gaping wound.
Wow, so how did the war impact the Islamic Republic?
Well, it's complex. On the one hand, it allowed the regime to consolidate power.
Okay, how so?
Well, it fostered a sense of national unity.
Rallying around the flag.
Yeah, exactly. And it allowed them to suppress dissent, because they were the defenders of the nation against foreign aggression. But on the other hand, it also exposed the regime's shortcomings. And it sowed the seeds of future discontent.
So it was a double-edged sword.
It was.
A unifying and a divisive force. Leaving those deep scars.
And as Amanat points out, the legacy of that war continues to this day.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Iranian history, what are some key takeaways?
Well, one thing that's important is understanding Iran's deep historical roots.
It's an ancient civilization.
It is.
Shaped by centuries of interaction.
Exactly.
With different empires and ideologies.
To understand modern Iran, you have to understand its past.
History isn't just days and facts. It's an ongoing story.
It is.
That continues to influence the present.
And another key takeaway is the interplay of internal and external forces shaping Iran's destiny.
Iran's always had to navigate those global powers.
It has.
From ancient times to modern times.
Geography is destiny.
And finally, Amanat's book highlights the resilience of the Iranian people.
It does.
They've faced so much.
Invasions, revolutions, wars, repression.
But they persevere.
They do.
They maintain their cultural identity.
Yes.
And they strive for a better future.
It's a powerful message of hope.
It is. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Iran, a modern history.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
Full of twists and turns.
Yeah, we've seen the rise and fall of empires.
Revolutions.
Political intrigue.
It's all there, and we hope you've enjoyed it.
We do.
And gained a deeper understanding of Iran.
It's a captivating nation.
Be sure to check out the show notes for more information and further resources.
And until next time, happy reading.